Now, when it comes to the incoming 2025 rookie class, comparing it against years past especially, people are going to tell you that it's a weaker class. Now, overall, that's going to be true, especially in superflex leagues, because of the lack of star power at the quarterback position here, as well as the lack of depth at the quarterback position. Last year, we got pretty spoiled with 6 quarterbacks going in the first top 12 picks in the NFL draft. Now, while that's not the case, and there are definitely some points in this class that are weaker overall, especially as well the wide receiver position, one thing not to get confused about for the 2025 class is the running back position. At the top, a lot of you may know Ashton Jeanty, who's a very special running back prospect. He's supposed to be going potentially inside of the top 10 picks in this NFL draft. I'm sure a lot of you are already pretty familiar with him, but this running back class actually has a lot more to offer than just Ashton Jeanty. There are a lot of very, very good running back prospects in this class that I think have a lot to offer for NFL teams, and not just that, for us when it comes to fantasy and dynasty football. Now, with the NFL Combine happening this week, there's sure to be a ton of shakeup overall in the way that people value and view players in this rookie class, and that does make sense. It's definitely one of the data points that does matter, athletic testing and measurables. However, one of the things that I think is important for me when we're going into this process is that I don't get too far over my skis, or I don't shift things way too much when it comes to the combine numbers. I definitely think it's an important data point, but I don't want to overall be double counting some of these things. For example, as we're going into this event, if there's a player that I don't really think has high-end top speed or breakaway speed from the field, and he comes out and doesn't run a super fast 40, like I shouldn't be very surprised by that, and I should only move my rankings minimally unless he has a terrible 40-yard dash, which isn't checking any of the boxes and is slower than a lot of the prospects overall in the class. And on the flip side, if I think a player is really fast and that's one of his overall best traits, and he goes out there and absolutely crushes the combine and has a super fast 40-yard dash, I shouldn't be double counting that. I shouldn't really be giving him much of a boost because we already expected him to be fast. Now, if anything, what I'm looking for are some players that maybe surprise. I didn't think we're actually that fast, and they do run a really fast 40, or vice versa. Those might be some things that actually bump players up and down my rankings accordingly. So what I'm going to be doing on today's video is kind of overall going through the running backs in this class, basically what players I think we should be familiar with, kind of where I have them right now ranked, at least as far as tiers go, where I'm looking for them to be at, and then ultimately going into the combine, if some of these players I'm looking for something specific or not in this combine. Those are going to be the things that I go over with you on today's video. So let's go ahead and get right into that. So at the top here, shouldn't be much of a surprise, but I have Ashton Jeanty at 1. He is in his own tier. I do think there's some really talented running backs as well that are not Ashton Jeanty, but he right now has separated himself from the pack. I think he has a lot of traits that make him extremely desirable. And I think one of the biggest things is where we project him currently in the NFL draft. The fact that he's the one back that's likely to be drafted inside of the top 10 or 12, where there might be some other running backs that get drafted first round. There's a big difference in the draft capital, and then overall, that type of volume that a player is going to be getting that's drafted that highly. Basically, any running back that we've seen drafted inside of the top 10 immediately has been a producer for our fantasy teams. Now, what their career has kind of turned into, you could go back and argue that, but a first round running back versus someone drafted in that top 12, totally different conversation as far as what we should really be expecting from them out of the gates. And then overall, the talent profiles typically are a lot different too. Now, getting into my next tier here, tier 2, there's 3 total running backs for me in my tier 2. We're going to start off at the top. I would have Caleb Johnson ranked 2nd overall in this class. There's a lot about him that I really like. This running back coming out of the University of Iowa, 6 foot, 225 pounds. He has all the size. That size is definitely a plus. That's the prototypical size that we would like to see for a potential running back to get a 3-down workload in the NFL. But it's not just the size for me with Caleb Johnson. Obviously, that's a plus. I think he has excellent vision. And when he's kind of waiting to hit the hole, he's really patient, because with that vision, he's waiting for his blockers to set up the hole. And when they finally do set up the hole, then he hits the hole running. What you don't really see, or I haven't seen anyway, as far as when watching Caleb Johnson, is him really trying to hit the hole early because there's nothing there in front of him. And that patient style running, I think, is going to translate to a lot of fantasy success in the NFL. Now, while Caleb Johnson doesn't have a lot of receiving work on his resume from college, I think he does have natural hands, and I think he does translate to a guy that can be a 3-down skill set running back for us at the next level. I think when it comes to the combine, especially for this weekend, I'm looking to see him run around a 4.5. If he runs that 4.5 range, especially under 4.5s, even if that's high 4.4s, I think Caleb Johnson's stock is going to stay right where it is, very high, if not potentially go up. Now, the next player on my list is going to be Omarion Hampton. He also, similar to Caleb Johnson, 6 foot 220. Obviously, for all these players, we'll see what they actually measure in at height and weight for the combine. but expecting him to be roughly 6', 220. Again, another guy with prototypical size. I think Omari Hampton, his game is also really fluid. He doesn't necessarily wow me on tape, but I think he does have a lot of the traits that we're going to want for fantasy football. He kind of can do it all. I don't think he has super home run speed. Again, for him, I'm kind of expecting similarly that 4.5 to low 4.4 with Omari Hampton. I think he's also going to be a guy that at worst case scenarios drafted in the early part of day 2. And I think Omari Hampton is a really special running back that has a chance to offer the 3-down skill set for us as well. So the last person in my tier 2 is going to be TreVeyon Henderson, my running back 4 overall in the tier 2. And the reason I have him in tier 2, this guy coming out of Ohio State University, 5'10", 215 roughly. We'll see what he is as far as that goes in the combine, what he checks in at. But this player has 3-down skill set as well as far as his size, but he truly has home run hitting ability. TreVeyon Henderson has a ton of burst and speed, and the top end speed is crazy. If you don't remember in the college football playoff, if you thought the score was going to be tied with Texas and Ohio State at halftime, very quickly, the next play, with very little time left on the clock, TreVeyon Henderson takes a run all the way to the house, showing his high end speed. And TreVeyon Henderson is a guy that coming out of high school was actually the #1 overall rated high school recruit at the running back position and inside of the top 10 overall players. This was the #1 overall running back prospect in that 2021 high school class, supposed to be the 2024 NFL class, but he ended up going back to school. And part of the reason for that, one of the themes for him has been durability issues, especially in the early part of his collegiate career. He was supposed to be the next guy. If you think about Ohio State, they had Ezekiel Elliott, then they had J.K. Dobbins. TreVeyon Henderson was supposed to be the next in line, but unfortunately he continued to have durability issues, basically staying on the field problems. And then this last year, they ended up bringing over Quinshon Judkins, who's in my next tier, but he split the backfield with Quinshon Judkins. So we never overall got to see TreVeyon Henderson unleashed, and his whole overall body of work in college has not really been what people were expecting for him as far as a prospect goes. But for TreVeyon Henderson, overall, I think he's closer in talent to a guy like Ashton Jeanty. The reality is there are some durability questions, and will he get the draft capital that ends up putting him into a workhorse type style role? But TreVeyon Henderson is an absolutely dynamic running back prospect. I think he has that home run hitting ability to be a complete difference maker for our dynasty and fantasy teams. So for me, that's why he's still in tier 2. When it comes to TreVeyon Henderson in this combine, again, I think he's incredibly explosive. I think he's going to do extremely well in the 40-yard dash. I think he's someone that has a chance to run that low 4.4s, if not possibly run a sub 4.4. And I think he's potentially going to be a riser as far as running backs from this combine. Now, starting off my tier 3 here, there's 7 running backs for me in my tier 3. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Quinshon Judkins. Again, this player was at Ohio State last year. Quinshon Judkins was a very good collegiate runner, was really great at Ole Miss, and then had, again, a split backfield at Ohio State with TreVeyon Henderson. Did very well. They kind of used him a little more as the Thunder to TreVeyon Henderson's Lightning this year, more of a bruiser, used at the goal line. Did really well for Ohio State. I think for Quinshon, the difference in why I have him in tier 3 versus tier 2, he doesn't offer the home run hitting ability. He's not someone that's going to blaze at the combine. I think if anything for him, this is someone that I'm worried about maybe getting a little bit of a double counting here, where people right now I just think like the name of Quinshon Judkins, expect him to do well, maybe don't know all that much about the player. And I think if he doesn't run a great 40, which I don't think that he will, that could end up hurting him. As long as he's in the 4.5s, I'm fine with it. If he ends up being someone that runs like 4.6, I think that even though I don't expect him to be a fast runner, I think that his stock might dip a little bit because of that. So very curious to see what he does as far as his 40-yard dash goes and how he looks at the combine. I think if anything, he has more to lose than to gain, because I don't think, again, he's going to run out and blaze at the 40-yard dash. But he's not someone that I'm actually worried about moving a ton in my rankings. I think that the community might move a little on him. But for me, Quinshon Judkins clearly in this tier. So the next person on my list here is going to be Cam Scatterbo. Now, he's coming out of Arizona State University. He's actually a transfer from Sacramento State, smaller college, where he transferred into Arizona State in his junior season. But this last year exploded over 1,700 rushing yards, had a really great collegiate career in his last 2 seasons at Arizona State. And I think for this player, Cam Scatterbo definitely is a name that a lot of people are starting to catch on. If you haven't heard much of him lately, you're starting to hear now. I think for the combine, this is not somebody that you should be expecting to run fast. I do not think he's going to even get sub 4.6. I think he's going to be in that 4.6 range, but as long as he doesn't run something like a 4.7, this, again, is not something that we should be worried about in double counting for Cam. I think that's not the skill set for him. He's not someone that's going to be taking the top off of defense. He's not going to be running away from people, but he has a lot of contact balance. I love a lot of the things about his game. Just home run hitting ability is not one of them. And when it comes to the combine, we shouldn't be expecting him to run a really fast 40. And if he does not do that, we shouldn't be surprised or moving him overall in our ranks accordingly all that much. So next person in this tier for me is going to be Ollie Gordon II out of Oklahoma State University. Now, if this player was coming out of school after last season, he'd probably be in a separate tier for me, and for a lot of people would have an overall totally separate draft profile than he does currently. After 2023, he had an unbelievable season. Obviously, you're not able to declare for the NFL after your sophomore year, so he comes back in his junior season, and everything kind of changed in this Oklahoma State offense. The offensive line was nowhere near as efficient, and then overall, they weren't nearly as good at passing the ball. This was a terrible team, and basically defenses were able to key on Ollie Gordon in a totally different way than they were in that 2023 season. His stats, everything about Ollie Gordon and the way that people overall view him has changed now to where he is in this tier. I think he still is a really talented back. I'm not really going to knock him too much for what happened in 2024. I think what really makes it nice, though, for a guy like Ollie Gordon, a guy like Trayvon Henderson, even much further down, a guy like Donovan Edwards, I do think we have a lot of running backs, though, that are kind of talented in this class and are coming out of bad situations where they didn't overall do as much with their talent as we would have liked to see them in college. And that's going to give us a chance to draft much later on some players that do have some very high upside for us in fantasy. Now, similarly to Cam Scatterbo and Quinshon Judkins, Ollie Gordon isn't someone that's a blazer home run hitting ability, but I do think he's plenty fast. I think he's probably going to be someone that runs in that mid to low 4.5s. He actually said that his goal is to run in the low 4.5s. So as long as he's doing that, I think he's more than doing what we need to see as far as his ability to be a really good player in the NFL. He's 6'1", 233 pounds. This is a very big back. So ultimately where he ends up going in the draft is going to be a big thing. Is he a day 2 guy or a day 3 guy? And then what is the landing spot for him? And overall, how crowded is that situation? I think Ollie Gordon is someone that once we have all that shaked out, he could be someone that definitely gets in closer to my tier 2 or fall down to my tier 4. But for right now, I think he's confidently, for me anyway, in this tier. Then I'm going to have Devin Neal next up on this list. So Devin Neal, 5'11", 220. Again, one of the things you should be noticing about this class, there is a lot of size. This kid, I love his contact balance, his vision, a lot of the traits for him. Again, he's not someone that has home run hitting ability, and that's kind of going to be overall for this tier. Not every single player, but overall for this tier, what's separating them from getting into that tier 2 for me is that maybe they don't quite have all the skill set or that home run hitting ability like a Trayvon Henderson, but they're not that far off. And again, someone like Devin Neal, I think he offers a lot of what we would like to see. I think he's really good as far as a receiver as well. One of the things for him I'd like to see him improve on is his pass protection. But again, Devin Neal has the prototypical size to be a 3-down running back in this league. And I think he has a lot of the traits that we would like in fantasy football. He's just, again, not going to be a blazer at the combine. All right, so next here on this list for me is going to be Damian Martinez. Damian Martinez played 2 years at Oregon State, then transferred this last year to Miami, where he played with Cam Ward in that offense. Damian Martinez is a running back you may not be all that familiar with. He is a guy that runs really hard. I like a lot of the traits about him, and I think he's going to be someone that checks enough of the boxes at the combine to, again, boost his stock overall, and I think this tier is really appropriate for him. Again, I think he's someone that's probably going to run in that mid to high 4.5 range, but he's a big back. I'm not concerned about his 40 overall, as long as he doesn't run a really slow 40, but he runs really hard. I think he has a lot of the traits to end up being a really good fantasy asset. Definitely some high touchdown potential out of Damian Martinez, the style which he plays. So he's going to be confidently my running back 9 in this class. Now, Dylan Sampson's going to be the next guy on this list for me in tier 3. Now, he's very different stylistically than a lot of the guys I have in my tier 3. 5'10", 190 pounds coming out of Tennessee, but he's a blazer. I mean, he's someone that absolutely should be blazing the 40-yard dash. And if you're not very familiar with him, I think you're going to see him run like at least low 4.4s. I wouldn't be surprised to see him run in the 4.3s, but that's something I think he has to do. It's kind of one of his calling cards. So for him, it would actually be a detriment if we did not see him run fast, just because of his size. And again, how much overall the running back class this year has a ton of size. We normally don't see this many running backs in general that are this talented, let alone guys that are all here, 220, 215 plus, that have that prototypical size as far as a 3-down running back in the NFL. The last person in my tier 3 is going to be Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech. Again, someone you may not be that familiar with, but I think Taj Brooks also has a lot of the traits that I really like as far as being a 3-down skill set running back in the NFL. All right, so next guy up on this list for me here. Now, this is tier 4, but don't discount anyone in this tier. I think there's a lot of talent, even though this is technically the running back 12 and beyond in this class. A ton of talent on this list for me anyway, the way I'm thinking about and viewing these players. So don't sleep on a lot of these guys. I think at the top here, Raheem Sanders, interesting case because this guy coming out of South Carolina this last year, he was at Arkansas prior, and this is a very highly recruited kid as well, a 4-star kid. If you don't know much about him, his nickname is Rocket. Rocket Sanders, he's someone I have on a lot of C2C leagues, so campus to Canton, where you actually get to play with the college kids over there. He's someone that has home run hitting ability. If you don't know by that name, Rocket, he's someone that should blaze, but he also has the prototype size. And with Rocket Sanders, I think we have a chance to really benefit from overall the depth of this running back class, as well as the fact that he he had, similarly to a guy like Trayvon Henderson, some durability issues staying on the field, and overall his production in college, I don't think anywhere really meets what we were expecting or hoping for a kid of his talent. But that's something that I'm really interested in this class because of the fact that he's like 225, 230. I think he's going to be a guy that has a chance to run in those 4.4s. And if he does that, that's just something that we should be chasing and wanting to have in fantasy football. A guy with that type of size and speed. Think of a guy like Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen, while behind Breece Hall in an offense we didn't even really like, he jumped up to something like running back 20 or 15 just because we got to see some of that body of work that he had where he has the size and the speed that really wows people. And in Dynasty, I think that's something that people are going to be chasing. Again, we're having a chance to possibly get him closer to running back 12 to 15 in this class, as opposed to him closer to a guy like Trayvon Henderson, where you're looking at Trev being someone that's probably in most people's top 3 to 5 in this class. So RJ Harvey, next guy on this list for me. And RJ Harvey's really fun to watch. He's elusive. He has this really great lateral quickness, jump cut when you watch him on tape. Problem with him coming out of UCF is he's 5'8", 205-ish. So what he's kind of going to check in at the combine is a big thing to watch. But for him, I just don't know if he has that ability to be a 3-down guy at the next level. He also, for having that size, while he does have some, reception ability, some pass catching prowess, I think he really struggles in pass pro. So that's kind of the reason I have him in this tier as opposed to tier 3 or tier 2. He's someone that definitely pops off on tape. I just don't know if his size is really going to allow him to be someone that we really care about all that much as fantasy goes. All right, so next guy on this list for me is going to be Brashard Smith. Now, Brashard Smith is a converted wide receiver, which makes it really intriguing from the pass catching and receiving option side of things, right? Someone that has the ability to be a receiver out of the backfield, really nice for PPR leagues. With him, one of my concerns is overall going to be just his size. He's 195 pounds, 200. So what he kind of checks in at the combine, a big deal. I also think that he's going to be a blazer. I think he's someone that has a chance to rise from the combine. I think he's probably going to be someone that's in that low 4.4 range. And if that's the case, he might be starting to, creep up people's boards. Overall, his draft capital is going to be a big deal to see where he is as far as my final ranks go. But this is someone that's really intriguing, again, in this RB 14, 15 range. So then after Brashard Smith, I have Woody Marks coming out of USC. I have Kyle Monangai coming out of Rutgers. Had a lot of production actually in the Big Ten. DJ Giddens coming out of Kansas State, and Donovan Edwards coming out of Michigan. That's my running back 15 through 18. Now, I'm not going to go into detail through all these players. Woody Marks, I think, is someone that could potentially benefit from the combine. One of the things about him I'm not really all that excited about. I don't necessarily care all that much about age, but he's one of the oldest running backs. I think he's actually the oldest running back in the class, over 24 years old. So that may not be the greatest things for him. And Donovan Edwards also is a really interesting case. So again, going back to Trayvon Henderson in that 2021 high school class, Trayvon Henderson was the running back 1 in the class, and out of high school, Donovan Edwards was the running back 2 overall in the class, one of the top 50 players overall in that 2021 high school class. He had a lot of moments that were really big for Michigan, but ultimately he had a ton of durability concerns as well the whole time. And then some off the field concerns lately with Donovan Edwards have really kind of have him fallen out of favor, and kind of what I was thinking about the prospect overall the last few years, and kind of where I'm thinking he's going to end up being in the 24 class, then to not come out in 24, to come out finally in 25. And right now, as far as his draft capital goes, I mean, it's pretty scary. I've seen for him a lot of times where you have to go find mocks where they're a full NFL mock draft because he's not in the first 3 rounds typically anywhere. And he's going to be a day 3 kid. So if he's a day 3 kid, that's something you're going to see. Is he a round 4, round 5 guy, or is he close to 7th round or undrafted range? Ultimately, I think Donovan Edwards does have a lot of talent, but I'm not really sure what NFL teams think of him and if he's going to get the opportunity at the next level. All right, so the last tier here that I'm going to go over with you is running backs 18 through 25 on mine, and this is my tier 5 and beyond. So we'll start off here with 2 guys, names that you may be familiar with or that might get a lot of buzz. Now, the first one here is going to be Trevor Etienne. Now, this is the brother of Travis Etienne, and Travis Etienne, while coming off of a really bad season in the NFL, obviously a name that a lot of people are familiar with. Trevor Etienne played at Florida and then transferred to the University of Georgia. I think right now Trevor Etienne is, because of the name cachet, going to be someone that people kind of stick to and track a little more than some of the other names in the class, and I think more than they should be. I think Trevor Etienne's a fine running back, but I don't think for the NFL level he offers anything special. So for me, he's kind of grouped in this next tier of guys where I don't really think there's anything about his style and play that makes him anything more valuable than, closer to the running back 20 in this class. Next guy on the list is going to be Jaden Blue. Now, Jaden Blue has a ton of buzz. He was a highly touted kid out of high school. I think he's going to be someone that does really well at the combine as well. When it comes to Jaden Blue, I'm not really a true believer in the talent of Jaden Blue. So we'll see what he ends up doing at the combine. I think he's probably going to be a riser, someone that I expect to gain a lot from the combine. I think he's going to run fast. I think he's going to look good in the pass catching drills. But when it comes to Jaden Blue, I'm not the biggest believer in his prospect profile overall. So we'll see ultimately what his draft capital is. He may be someone that I have to push up my dynasty rankings in this class just because of the draft capital. Now, the last few guys here to round out this tier 5 plus for me are going to be Corey Kiner coming out of Cincinnati, Jordan James out of Oregon, LaQuint Allen coming out of Syracuse, Bayshal Tootin coming out of Virginia Tech. He was a transfer from North Carolina A&T, and then Jarquez Hunter coming out of Auburn. All right, so there you have it. Those are the top 24 running backs for me at the moment, the top 24 prospects in this 2025 class with what we know today. So at this point, to give you all those names confidently, I think it should hopefully be showing you there's a lot of depth at this class, at least for what we know at the moment. Let me know what you thought overall of this video, what you think overall about these prospects and players. Are there some names that I left off the list? There's definitely, I didn't want to keep going past 24 of them, but if there's some names that you think I left off the list or that I should have mentioned, let me know that in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you want to have more Dynasty breakdowns all off season, and I'll see you back here, same time, same place for the BDGE Dynasty channel. I'm out of this thing. Peace.